Welcome back to the Thomas Galgani Show. I'm your host, Thomas Galgani, and today I'm going to be doing kind of a shorter episode that is a style that I think I'm going to start doing more often, shorter, that is on a topic that I've recently written about. Sometimes we'll have on guests. I had on a guest this past weekend, and that episode is going to be coming out later this week. I'm not sure, probably Thursday or Friday. But the first episode for this week, I wanted it to be about a shorter topic that I felt was worth kind of talking about. I've already written about this in my blog, but I wanted to kind of sit in front of the camera and talk about this because maybe it'll reach, different people that way. But I also felt like I wanted to kind of hash through this myself. So in case you haven't realized already, a lot of this, me talking about these issues really helps me personally because I think that, or in fact, I know a lot of times, we don't really understand something that well until we actually talk about it. And my goal for this is because is to have fun, with this content, but it's also to hopefully help other people that may not have experienced these types of things or that have questions on these topics. And, when we talk about these things, of course, we help ourselves in the process. So let's get into it. This is about belonging. Okay. So I think it's safe to say that that's one of the most one of the biggest topics that we struggle with as people, that we strive for, right? We always want to belong, whether that's as kids in high school, obviously that's the big thing, continues on through college, and then it never goes away. I would say, later on in life. And even if you don't have a group of friends that you're trying to fit in with or whatever, you're always trying to get some sort of status or feel like you belong to some sort of identity, some sort of group that you can kind of attach yourself to. I think there's plenty of research that backs that. And I want to kind of tell a story. A couple of weeks ago, 2 weekends ago, actually, I shot a very elegant kind of upscale wedding in Carmel Valley in California. And I got to be honest, I've shot a lot of really nice weddings, and so it wasn't that abnormal for me at all. In fact, I knew a lot of the people there because I was referred by another, by people who had were at that wedding as well. And but it wasn't that abnormal, the kind of the upscale nature of it. But with that being said, kind of when I was there, it started to hit me of like, man, I haven't always shot at super nice events like this. Like I said, plenty of times that has been the case, but there was a moment, where I was kind of like, man, and what makes me qualified to be here? Like, they have hired me to film their wedding, put together a video and hopefully capture their day, make it, do it justice, and then also put some creative touches to it. But on top of all that, the memories that they're looking for, it's also about the experience that you're giving them on the day of too. And you have to, as a vendor at a wedding, you're always working with other vendors, especially as the videographer. You have to kind of be in touch with the DJ a little bit because of sound. You have to also know what's going on. With the photographer, definitely that's something that you have to really try to work seamlessly with all these other people that you've, most likely have never met before. At some point, obviously, yeah, you start to work with plenty of vendors that you have met before. But this one, in particular, I kind of caught myself and I was like, man, what makes me qualified to do this? And I had to kind of stop myself, and it wasn't ever an issue, especially, at this wedding. And I've never really had that happen before where I'm kind of paused in my tracks, but I definitely kind of went through that thought process in my head. And I said, no, I've put in the time and the reps to be good at this. And I know that I can deliver a great product and a great experience for my clients. And it kind of got me reflecting though on these upscale events. What is the difference between, or let me kind of back up here. There's a funny sort of idea that I thought about where it's like, people want qualified vendors, people doing the job that have been trained and whatever it is, but a celebrity can get in anywhere. And what I mean by that is, let's take, a professional athlete, or better yet, a movie star. And I use that example just because maybe they're more recognizable by their appearance, across, a wide range of groups. If somebody like that showed up to an event, they would be welcomed with open arms, most likely. Maybe not. Of course, some people might not want them there, depending on whatever the event is, who the group is. But and those people, who are welcomed, the celebrities or famous people, whatever it is, that status, there's nothing about them, most likely, that makes them more qualified to be there, other than they're recognizable and there's a cool nature about them, if they're liked, some might be hated, but my point is a lot of times it really just comes down to how are you going to present yourself, what makes you any less qualified to be at an event than somebody else. And in this context, in this example, I'm talking about filming a wedding, but it could be anything. It could be at, maybe you're a newer kind of bartender or waiter, or really anything, even in a work setting. If things are really nice and you're working in an office that is much nicer than you're accustomed to, you might have to kind of check yourself for a second and be like, all right, what, how did this happen, type of thing. And, it's just a funny thing because, by all means, I think you should get all of the credentials that you absolutely, that you might need. An example of this that I gave in my blog talking about this is with video production. You're supposed to be Part 107 certified with the FAA to fly a drone. And I wanted to get that because it interests me. I think the knowledge is very useful. And, I think it's also safer, even though it's just a little drone. A lot of people think it's just a joke, but I think it's great to know that knowledge. And, at the end of the day, you really could hurt somebody or cause some damage to some property if you don't really know what you're doing. And so the little steps like that, right, that you can do, like, okay, I've done this. I've flown the drone for hours. So now I'm comfortable flying it around people or, fancy buildings or property. I have the certification. I belong here. I can do this. I've checked the airspace, always going through that checklist, the sequence of like, hey, no, this is what it is. And I'm also current in whatever it is I'm trying to do. Like I have refreshed, or I'm up to date on my practice, right? So I'm not going to make some mistake that comes out of a lack of practice or not being current in that skill set. And, I really just think that when it comes to belonging, in my opinion, I think that most of the time people will treat you in a way that you deserve. And what I mean by that is, yes, life is unfair, right? Some people have it harder in different situations than others, but at the end of the day, the energy that you give off is what people will throw back at you, right? And I'm talking about in the long run, in the grand scheme of things, like over weeks, if not months and years. There may be a stretch where you're performing poorly, or let's say even well, right? But people are kind of jerks to you. At the end, in the long run, people will eventually realize that, hey, this is how it is, or they will kind of treat you differently. And especially in today's world with social media and stuff like that, there's a lot less hiding. And that's one of the things I've been hearing a lot more people talk about is like, you actually have to be a good person. Otherwise, people will find out eventually. There are all kinds of examples of that coming out where, and I'm not even talking about some kind of big, illegal scandals or like unbecoming behavior, but even just if somebody's a jerk, eventually it comes out. And I think that's, it kind of mirrors this whole idea of belonging, right? If you belong somewhere, it will usually be reflected back towards you eventually. I think that's my opinion. Maybe some of you guys, you want to leave a comment, change my mind on this. I think that it really comes down to how you present yourself. If you act like new or unconfident, then people are going to treat you new, or like, people want to see that confidence. They'll have confidence if you have confidence in yourself. Okay. And, it's one of those things where if we focus on how we are performing, like how we're presenting ourselves, then, it's really going to be about like the energy that you're getting back then. And, I want to kind of close on an example too of playing baseball as a kid. I remember a lot of times the sloppy hits that I would have if it was like a grounder or even some of the foul balls or something, where the ball hits on the back closer to your hands or in a weird way where it hurts your hands. Or even the ones where it's like maybe a base hit, but it's not that great. A lot of times you feel it way more. You feel it so much more than a big hit. A big hit, everything is in alignment, right? Hit placement, timing, all that stuff is in alignment, and you don't even feel the contact as much. At least that's been my experience. I've heard I've heard professional players talk about that, and it just sort of happens. And I feel like that's analogous to real life, because when you're interacting with people, because if you belong somewhere, they're not even going to ask you for credentials, for example, like I gave the celebrity example. Those people would just walk up and be welcomed, right? And in a lot of situations, and like me filming this wedding, people were very nice to me and welcoming, and they opened the door. Like it was almost like, hey, we want to have a great time. We hired you because we want to, because we trust you, right? That's all it really comes down to is trust. And so, I wanted to make sure that I acted the part. I acted like I did belong there. And then, it's like, that doesn't mean overstep. That doesn't mean, act like a jerk to anybody, smile. I think smiling is one of the biggest things. Like if somebody calls your name, don't turn around and be annoyed. I think a lot of people, I've done that before, where it's like if you're rushed or something like that. So yeah, obviously be pleasant, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, act like you belong there too. So maybe this podcast is less on belonging and more about mirroring and, the energy that you put out is ultimately what you get back, and that might seem overly simplistic to some of you guys, but I think it's something that, at least for me, I think is worth paying more attention to. So again, just like with the baseball example, when it's right, people will just be glad that you're there, right? So you make the big hits without feeling that impact to you. And in life, people are just happy that you're there. And then in my opinion, as I wrote this one down, because I think it's important. Belonging is about making the choice to belong, and those around you will sense your choice at every event. A lot of times that choice starts before the moment. So that comes with preparation, but then also in the moment, are you, and I'm not just talking about like being present, but also like, hey, are you going to be the person, that people need you to be? So, and if you are somewhere, most likely you do belong there, and it's up to you to make that the reality. Okay. So what I mean by that is like, you wouldn't have shown up there if it wasn't meant to be. Right. And yeah, so I'm going to end on that, guys. thank you so much for listening. Like I said, the next podcast is with a guest, of a friend of mine who is a cinematographer, and that one is really interesting. Also has a little bit to do with belonging, because we talk about, working in the film industry, video production, and stuff like that, and a lot more on storytelling. It's a little bit more lighthearted at times, but that's definitely going to be worth tuning in. So thank you again for listening, and till next time, guys.